The Gloster Meteor was a twin-engine, single-seat jet interceptor and ground attack fighter of all-metal construction. The first experimental design was flown on the 15th of May, 1941, as the first British jet-propelled aircraft. It entered service with the Royal Air Force No. 616 Squadron in 1944 and was initially used to counter V-1 flying bombs entering English airspace. The Royal Australian Air Force had on loan an ex-RAF Meteor, arriving at RAAF base Laverton from the United Kingdom for the purpose of trials. It was assembled and flown as A-77-1, the first jet fighter for the RAAF in June 1946. However, it would be the de Havilland Vampire that would become the first jet to enter Australian squadron service in 1949. The Meteor would not see service until halfway through 77 Squadron's engagement in the Korean War, when the Meteors replaced the Mustangs flown by the squadron. The first 17 Meteors, 15 Mark 8 fighters, and 2 Mark 7 two-seat trainers arrived in Japan for conversion training. There would be 93 Meteor Mark 8s and 4 Mark 7s delivered to the RAAF for service in the Korean War. The 77 Squadron would be the first Australian squadron to take jet aircraft into combat on the 29th of July, 1951. The squadron would patrol near the Yalu River for air-to-air combat, but were outclassed by the MiG-15s employed by the North Koreans. The MiG-15 was a more capable aircraft in many respects, better matched by the American Sabres than the Australian Meteors, although 77 Squadron was credited with shooting down 3 MiG-15s during this early phase of their operation. By early 1952, the squadron was reassigned to ground attack operations for which the Meteor was well equipped to handle. During their service in Korea, the RAAF modified and tested the Meteor to deploy unguided rockets and successfully used the aircraft with 8 27-kilogram rockets under the wings. There was also the successful use of napalm rockets, called the Flaming Onion, which had a 5-gallon tank of napalm as its warhead, according to its inventor Flight Lieutenant J.C. Smith, who was based with 91 Wing RAAF in Iwakuni, Japan. 77 Squadron's operations in Korea were costly, with the loss of 32 pilots and 53 Meteors to enemy action and accidents between July 1951 and July 1953. At the end of the war, the surviving Meteors were brought back to Australia on HMS Vengeance. By the time 77 Squadron had returned to Australia in December 1954, it had spent nearly 12 years continual overseas service. The Meteors were distributed between 75 and 77 squadrons until they were withdrawn by late 1956 and replaced by the CAC Sabre. Meteors were then allocated to No. 22 and 23 Citizen Air Force squadrons for general training until the mid-1960s. A handful stayed on with 38 Squadron for a while, and some were used as target drones, while others survived as static displays. For an in-depth documentary series about 77 Squadron in Korea, please follow the link to part 1 of that series.